we were talking about Iran, recently they have their elections, and a moderate leader has been elected by the Iranian people. Do you think that the nuclear deal, which was set aside by Trump, will be reconsidered because the Iranian newly elected Iranian president has offered a dialogue with the Europeans?
I don't think it will. I don't think either party will engage in that at this point. I think there's a couple of reasons. There's some skepticism about whether the real power has actually changed in Iran. Who's actually running the country there. And secondly, there's always been a problem with Congress about getting support in Congress for the Iran deal. Even a lot of Democrats weren't happy with it the first time around. And then, as I say, the developments in Israel has changed the picture there. So I can't see either party really seriously re-engaging in that effort. And frankly, I don't see it happening in Europe either, particularly at the moment as the situation in the Middle East remains the way it is.
Okay, let's talk about the relationship between USA and the Europe, because it has been a kind of consideration from years that Europeans were considering their own security system, and before the 9/11, and simultaneously when the Trump came, he was talking about the NATO's role and the funding by the American taxpayers' money, and he has complaints about all other European NATO members that they are not contributing properly. Do you think that after Ukraine war and 9/11 has provided an opportunity for this alliance of America and the Europeans, but still they have their lot of issues to be dealt with?
Yeah, I do think Donald Trump is likely to continue his call for Europe to invest more in defence. However, I think things have changed in the last year or two. They have changed. A lot more NATO countries are now investing a lot more money in defence because of the invasion of Ukraine. So countries like Germany have really, really increased their expenditure on defence, like phenomenally so over the last 18 months or so. So not all countries are meeting the 2% target of GDP that is set out in NATO, but a lot more European countries are. So I think, again, this has changed since Donald Trump was in power first time around. And he wasn't the first president to call for Europe to do more in terms of defence spending. President Obama also criticised Europe for the same thing. But I think the Europeans are more worried about Donald Trump's commitment to the NATO alliance, given that he has continuously criticised NATO. They're worried about that. Obviously, the only time that Article 5 was invoked, where a mutual defence clause essentially was after 9/11. Europeans are obviously hoping that won't have to happen again in Europe, but there are a lot of countries, particularly in the east of Europe, who are very concerned about the war in Ukraine and about how they are just on the border of that war, and that they could be next in Putin's sights.
Do you think that as the Europeans go with America on Ukraine issue and about the Russia issue, the Europeans will go with same zeal and same strength on China and South China Sea issues?
I think Ukraine is a bigger issue for Europe because it's on its continent. Yes. And, it's now promised the Ukrainians that they can begin negotiations to join the European Union, for example. And so they're much more invested in that. So I think China, no, I think yes, there's an increased engagement by NATO and by the European Union in what's happening in that part of the world near China. But a lot of the leaders have said they don't want to get involved. Would they get involved to the same extent as the United States might if there was conflict with Taiwan, for example? That's unclear. But some countries, like for example President Macron of France, has indicated before that he would not be prepared really to row in behind America if it was going to intervene there. So I think the Ukraine is going to remain the dominant concern for Europeans.
What do you think that as Shanghai Cooperation and the BRICS, do you think that their increasing role is a threat to the Western powers?
I think it is a new dynamic that they have to grapple with. We've seen countries like India, South Africa, Brazil take a more central role. Brazil is currently in the G20 presidency. and as a result is making its presence felt. So I think there is more of awareness now, and also of the Gulf countries like the UAE, Saudi Arabia, as their role, not just economically, but as kind of some kind of go-between in foreign policy and international relations. So yeah, I think there is an awareness of this change, even though I don't think Europe and the West feel particularly threatened, but I think they are aware of this change.
When we talk about BRICS, we have listening that they are planning to have a currency issue, that they are launching a currency to de-dollarize the trade in the global market. Do you think this is a great threat to the American power?
It potentially would be, presumably, if it happens, but I don't think people see it as imminent. I don't think there is a major concern that is going to happen anytime soon. The American economy is still doing very well. It's been doing very well under Trump or under Biden. So even though that doesn't seem to be benefiting particularly in the election campaign, but no, I don't think it's a huge concern at the moment. I think they're more concerned about the economic impact of their relationship with China and how that affects trade. But at the moment, I don't think it's a huge concern.